You're listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call, where Kevin, Wendy, and Brent talk about anything and everything that couldn't quite squeeze into the regular show. Today we talk about Supernatural, Game of Thrones, Hannibal, Community, Penny Dreadful, Continuum, Orphan Black, Agent Carter, Hindsight, and The 100.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Got lots of fun stuff to cover, and we're going to let Wendy get us started.
So first I want to talk about the Supernatural season finale. We finally get progression on the Mark of Cain. So last week Dean went off and killed a whole bunch of the Steins, including a kid who probably didn't really need killing because he hadn't turned into a monster full on yet. And after that, Dean's on the road. It turns out he is so desperate, he summons Death. And it was really nice to see the actor who plays Death returning. I thought it was hilarious that Dean also had plenty of junk food, taquitos and fries and stuff for him. And the idea of Dean cooking that food for him was very amusing to me. And we also get Death sort of explaining some stuff, and some of what he explained was interesting, and some of it was a little problematic for the myth arc for me. But the nutshell is the mark that Dean is wearing, this curse, is actually a lock to keep the darkness at bay from coming into the world. And originally this darkness was beaten back by God and the angels, and the mark was put on Lucifer, and then Lucifer transferred it to Cain, I guess. So the upshot is somebody has to keep this lock on them. So Death's scenario is he will take Dean to another place, and it actually sounds like another planet, where he can live. He won't hurt anybody, but of course he's going to be basically out of the picture. And Death also believes that Sam will never willingly accept this. So to make sure that this deal is solidified, they need to kill Sam. And Dean is going to kill Sam. There was some really interesting stuff going on when Sam finally shows up at the place where they're located to try to stop Dean. To me, it had too many parallels to season 5's finale before Sam fell into the pit. But the craziest part was Dean gets handed the scythe of death. Looks like he's going to kill Sam with it. But then he actually turns around and whacks Death, and the person that we had seen disappears. And I'm really scratching my head. How can you kill Death? Can you kill Death? Will someone else become Death? Will Dean become Death? So that raised a lot of interesting questions. The other flip side of trying to solve this Mark of Cain problem was Sam's activities with Rowena to break the spell. And breaking the spell is what is going to unleash the darkness. So they actually have unleashed the darkness because Rowena works the spell. There was some really interesting stuff with Crowley coming back at Castiel's request to help with getting the ingredients that are needed for the spell, including something that Rowena loved, and Castiel is able to pull that out of her. And it turns out had been a young kid who she gave immortality to. I think his name was Oscar. And she actually needs to use the blood of her loved one to work this spell. So the spell works. Dean no longer has the mark, but of course that means the darkness is coming, which we see at the very end. And also Rowena seems to, now that she has cracked the code on the spell book, sort of powered up to the next level and seems to be able to control Crowley and Castiel. They seem to be about to kill each other at the finale. So I was glad there was resolution finally on the Mark of Cain stuff. Some really powerful moments for a lot of the characters. I'm Still scratching my head about Death, though, and wondering what's coming next.
Yeah, the fact that the Scythe worked on Death did kind of surprise me. But then, of course, since that occurred in the story prior to Rowena having to kill the one she loved, I thought, oh, well, they've just killed Death, so she won't be able to kill him, so she won't be able to finish the spell, so the mark will not be removed. And, of course, they just kind of hand-waved all that and just did it anyway, which I thought was interesting. This was a pretty well-packed episode. I kind of wish the whole season, like I said, was like this, because so much of the season was so draggy and had nothing to do with the mark. And when it did have anything to do with the mark, it was kind of more of a mopey, talk about our feelings. Oh, Dean is so aggro, sort of little bits here and there. But I wanted the whole thing to be, the whole season would have been great if Dean was on his own and on a rampage, and if it had started out with him still being a demon. If he had stayed a demon throughout the entire season and been on a rampage, and Sam was working, with Castiel and all these other people to try to break the that would have been a much better season. But instead it was, pretty soon they got them back together and they just continued as if nothing had happened for several episodes, and then they'd talk about their feelings every once in a while. It just, it was so annoying. Yeah, the ending did kind of feel familiar in a way, the whole confrontation. I really was upset and disappointed when he swung around and attempted to kill Death, if he has killed him. I really wanted him to kill Sam. I really think that character is a big whiny butt who doesn't belong in this show, but oh well, that's not going to happen. Here's where I get disappointed and where I start sighing a lot, because Supernatural has lost its way since season 5. You get to set up for something that could be a wonderful, incredible season full of apocalypse. I mean, real apocalypse, not like the one apocalypse they had. With this darkness going everywhere and just death and mayhem and nonstop action and working towards those. But it won't be that. It'll be one episode, maybe 2, and then they'll go back to as if nothing happened, talking about their feelings on the back of the car. It just is so annoying, the cookie cutter nature of the show now. I really wish they would just, I don't know. I don't know what they can do at this point. Maybe they should just cancel it.
Wow, Debbie Downer there, huh?
No, Randy realism.
Okay, that's I like that. Save that title. That'll come into play very often. And certainly with Supernatural. And come on, we've all seen it. We've all joked about it. 10 seasons in, we get another one coming. Let's face it, the fans who are just big Supernatural fans just want the show on the air, regardless of the content. They really do. And it's doing well enough in the ratings, so it's going to hang around. And yeah, I've emotionally checked out for a lot of Supernatural now. But every now and then we have a fun episode. I was away the week that we had the episode that Charlie died, and I was really ticked off. I knew it was coming, but not to say in that episode, but we know Supernatural kills off everybody but Sam and Dean and Cass maybe. But it's just like, okay, it's doing what it's done, and it did finish out strong, and it had several good eps. But I'm just not sure I'm coming back for next season, and I don't mean that in a negative way, other than it's done what it's done. I've enjoyed it, but we got a bunch of other new shows coming. Maybe it's time to just thank them and let it go, because it's what else can you do now? They've done so much. So, yeah, Brent, I might hang around for a couple of what might be cool episodes on the brink of the world collapsing, and then we'll go back to the usual stuff, and maybe it'll be time to kind of find time for something else. So they did a good job. I still like the guys, but yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's funny because I have the same thought, Kevin. I'm like, do I want to watch season 11? I'm not really sure, which I've never had that reaction to Supernatural before. I mean, I'd always been sort of hopeful that they were going to sort of turn a corner. And I had the opportunity to see a couple episodes of season 4, which is probably my favorite season. Season 2 and season 4 are sort of tied. And part of that is because in that episode, we had all this mystery about who is Castiel? What is his agenda? What does it mean that Dean's been pulled back from hell? What happened to him? And there was real character stuff happening in that episode. And there hasn't really been anything since that season 5 conclusion. There's been these sort of particular problems, the Mark of Cain problem for Dean. And I agree, Brent, it's been a lot of talking about how worried we are about Dean. I would have much rather just seen Dean go off the reservation for 6 or 7 episodes instead of the 2 that we got in the beginning where he was a demon, and then maybe 1.5 in the back half of the season. So I would really like to see something happen with this quote darkness. Hopefully it will go to the Buffy extreme, because I can't see how much more of the show there is, truthfully. They either need to introduce a new character that shakes things up the same way that the Angels and Crowley have, but at this point, those characters are so different from what they were before. They've turned into just plot crutches in a lot of ways. I'm wondering, more on the business side, how much it costs to make the show now. And if these actors are negotiating every season, that just means it's going to get more and more expensive. So I can't imagine they're going to go beyond season 12. At this point, I can't see how the story they've just laid down could be, go beyond that.
The next season is far enough away that it probably, what I'm about to say now probably won't hold true, but I am really tempted, as you were talking about, Wendy, you were actually thinking about it, really tempted not to watch next season. Just so that my little potential contribution of showing a DVR viewership of the show would help to finally put it out of its misery. But I don't know that that's going to happen. And by the way, Kevin, I have a better alternative to Debbie Downer. It's Ricky Realist. I'm Ricky Realist.
I was going to say it is the reality, because I think the fact that the show has so much success for the CW is part of the reason why they're accepting the standard. But Kevin, I thought your 200 minute was going to be ranting about Supernatural, because when I was done watching it, I was kind of like, I'm not sure what I think about this finale. There were some parts I really liked, but then I was sort of scratching my head about what actually happened in this story, and especially with Death. And I went online, and it was all, puppies and rainbows. It was the best thing ever. It was so great. And then, but it was very divided, because there was people who had that reaction, and then there were people who were way more extreme than me in terms of that was the biggest piece of crap ever. It's just a retread of stories and character conversations we've had before. So I don't know. Maybe I will delay my watching of Supernatural next season. I depending on how much other stuff is on the schedule, it really will be a question of if I make time for it or not.
Yeah, there's just so much other stuff. It's just, is this going to be worth investing the time? I mean, it's 10 seasons, folks. That's 230 or thereabouts episodes. How many more stories can you tell? Let's just be realistic. It's just a case of there are still enough fans of Sam and Dean that they'd watch them sitting on the bumper having a beer talking. There were enough of them that makes it worth the CW airing it. A lot of us want more, and we're probably not going to get it. So, like you said, Brent, do you want to tease yourself by maybe having a cool episode or two at the beginning to pick up on where we left off, or just say, hey, thanks, we've loved it, but it's just time for something else?
So the other thing I wanted to mention for something else is we announced this on the Game of Thrones bonus show, and I wanted to mention it here, is that we're running a small council contest. You just have to send in some kind of feedback, commentary, questions. We give you a whole bunch of suggestions for what to contribute as your entry. You can enter as many times as you want. Just each entry has to be unique. And you can win a Game of Thrones season on DVD or Blu-ray, valued up to $50 US. And also the History of Westeros book, which is a big coffee table book with lots of illustrations and lots of details about the history of Westeros. It's pretty cool. So if folks are at all curious about Game of Thrones, or behind, or just want to watch some of the DVDs because they are chock full of bonus features, check out the contest.
That does sound pretty cool. Are you doing it where like the book is the first prize and the DVDs are a second prize, or are they both going to just one winner?
Nope, they both go to one winner.
A mega prize. That's a pretty cool one, folks. Certainly, if you have any interest in Game of Thrones, like Wendy said, or want to jump in, take a look at it. I mean, I'm not a huge Game of Thrones fan, but just looking through the links you shared of the book and the shot at winning the DVD. And again, we don't have tens of thousands of entries in our contest, so, pretty good shot if you enter at winning here. So, good chance to get something really cool.
There is, and it is open to the whole world, which is why the value on the DVD is limited, because some of those region-free DVDs are expensive, but hopefully there'll be something for everyone. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is not genre, but it's practically genre, and it's such a great show, is I wanted to share a link to a first look at Hannibal Season 3. It also has a genre hook because Gillian Anderson is playing a major character in the show in Season 3 as well. There's lots of her in the first look trailer, but this is a show that we don't talk about because it's not genre, but it's a fantastic show in terms of the characters, the story. It's got suspense. It's macabre in some ways. It's got a lot of mystery. And the production of it is just outstanding. It's by Brian Fuller, who I really like his other shows, Pushing Daisies. So just wanted to share that with folks.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm not really watching Hannibal, but I do have one question. Since Gillian Anderson has been for a while now embracing the fact that she really is an Englishwoman, is it going to be an English accent for her or an American accent?
She has an accent that I would say is continental. So you can hear, she's been in the show already. She was in season 2. I think she might have even been featured in season 1, in maybe one episode or something. But she doesn't sound British, but she doesn't also sound American either. It's kind of an ambiguous sort of accent.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So in this season, a big part of it is set in Europe. So who knows, her persona might take on more accent than it has in the past.
I do know the folks who are fans of Hannibal are major, big fans of it. So I do know it's a very passionate fan base, seeing some of the podcasts and other fan things out there. So yeah, for those of you that are the end of the show, I'm seeing lots of excitement about the look at the next season.
Yeah, really exciting. Also because of some other characters that are coming in that I haven't read the books, but that they're all tied to the books. And there's a character that folks have been waiting for who's coming in. And that's it for me.
All righty, thank you. All right, Brent, what have you got?
Well, first of all, I want to thank listener Benny, who sent us a message on Facebook to try to explain, how he found our podcast. And it was interesting. He shared a link to a website that allowed him to type in the fact that he liked Star Trek The Next Generation, and it recommended Farscape for him to watch. And then he found the Scapecast, and then he found tuning into Sci-Fi TV. But anyway, this website is called Submetrics that he wanted to tell us about. And I did give it a look, and I typed in some shows, and I was a little dismayed at the results. And then I went to their About, where I read an explanation of exactly how their algorithm worked for matching shows. And apparently they're 100% matching shows based on dialogue, and it's closed captioning. They take the captions and they run it through their algorithms, and they determine which shows kind of talk about the same things. And I can see why I was a little dismayed by the results, because I don't know that that's going to always give you the results you want. I want shows that are matched on theme or characters. Just matching on dialogue's fine. That's one aspect of it. I really wish they could somehow throw into their matching algorithm some of the other aspects of it, like, size of the cast or setting or, types of characters and things like that. But it is an interesting site to check out, and it is an experimental. It's a beta site, and they're kind of playing with this idea. Maybe they will enhance in the future. So just wanted to thank Benny for the link, and just offer that to you guys too if you want to go check it out.
Yeah, first and foremost, it was great to have him reach out to us. We always love when listeners give us a little background, and he's been a long-time listener, and that was great. So super to hear from him there. And the site, it's still interesting. You're right. I threw in a couple of shows to that link, got a couple of recommendations where I went, okay, that makes perfect sense, and got a couple others where I was like, what? And so, it's like anything else when you try to automate this stuff. How far can you take it? But interesting that you think about how to do it and try to build something to do it. I just think is fascinating. So in that sense, it was pretty cool.
This was cool. I actually put Supernatural in there to see what it would come up with, because it's been on for so long, and it was interesting what words did come up. A lot of them, I was surprised. I think some of them are more focused on this most current season versus past ones, but it was nice to see words like pie show up too.
I found it fascinating. I put in Lost Girl, and the top 2 recommendations were both animated shows.
Yeah. They don't know you very well, do they, Kevin?
Don't know me at all. Obviously, it's not tailored to Kevin, but the fact they would bring up... So I'm just saying, it was just interesting to see the different combinations.
I also wanted to talk about last week's episode of Community. I thought it was a highlight of the season for me. It was their paintball episode. It's not happening at the end of the season. It's close. But this was a pretty cool one because we get the return of Starburns at the beginning, and at first you think it's going to have something to do with drama because he's attending some sort of a one-woman show and talking about how drama's dead and leaving, but it turns quickly into a paintball episode. But it's kind of a subdued paintball episode, and it's centered around the fact that they're trying to avoid more paintball battles at Greendale, and how nobody can quite get out of the world, and they turn it into kind of a I don't know if the opening card title sequence. You guys are going to have to tell me if you really recognize it. At first, I thought James Bond, but then I thought no, it's something else. It's some sort of like a criminal. I don't know if it's Fast and Furious or something. It's some kind of other show like that they were parodying with the credits. But I enjoyed the back and forth, and I enjoyed the paintball, of course, as always. And the little twist at the end about how it was the custodial staff who in the beginning were the ones objecting to all the paintball who are actually the ones behind the paintball. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, Brent and I got a chance to talk just a little before we started to record. And again, you've heard us folks talk about how comedies hit all of us so different. I enjoyed the episode. It was good, but I think maybe it was a case of where I got my expectations too high because some of the other paintball episodes have just been, to me, absolutely awesome. And this one was good. But there were probably still a couple of other episodes in season 6 that I enjoyed more. So comedy hits at different spots. It was a well-done Community. I loved that we, stayed in the mythos of what they do. But it was still just kind of that was good. Not a great one for me.
Well, that's funny because when it first started, I was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. And then when they got to the scene where Jeff comes back into the room and he's telling everyone, look, Frankie's really upset. We have to shut this down. And everyone pulls the guns and they have the Mexican standoff. That's when I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. and it got, I don't know, it seemed to actually have more momentum going towards it. Brent, I was having the same problem because at first I was like, oh, it's James Bond. But then I was like, maybe it's Mission Impossible. But it never really clicked to me. I haven't seen enough of the Fast and Furious movies. Maybe it's from there. I wasn't sure. The closest I could get was Mission Impossible. And then when they started in with the calling each other by like Clooney and other names, I was like, oh, is this supposed to be Ocean's 11, 12, 13 kind of a thing? Once they were all walking around with their little earpieces in. So I don't know. It seemed like it touched on all those things to me, though.
Yeah, well, typical with Community, it probably did touch on all those things. A couple things I wanted to say about this too. One, it really, and I mentioned this to Kevin before the show, it's for the first time, I think, this season, this felt like an old Community to me. It had the same pacing, the tightness to it. It felt really good. And you're right, with the standoff with the guns, I love how, of course, it starts up with Chang, who's threatening them with the paintball. They all whip out their pistols and shoot him at the same time. I thought that was great. But I was expecting, I don't know about you, but this whole time I was like, oh, they're going to have a Troy cameo here, aren't they? And he never showed up.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see Troy, I have to admit. I like the actor who came in as the custodian. He's funny. I like him a lot. And I love the scene in the elevator with the dean when he, freaks out and inadvertently takes everyone out. I thought that was really well choreographed. And I like Jeff's speech when he was saying, we're not evil, we're just the Robert Downey Jr. And, to explain how they're screw-ups, but they're likable screw-ups who aren't, really bad. So I like that a lot.
The Dean scene in the elevator, in case you didn't catch it, was absolutely a parody of the Captain America 2 scene, where Captain America's surrounded by the bad guys in the elevator.
I haven't seen Captain America 2.
Oh, what?
So I didn't know.
That's so pivotal. Oh, that movie is so pivotal to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You have to see it.
Well, I haven't seen the Avengers Ultron either.
Well, definitely see Captain America 2 before that.
Yeah, keep them in sequence.
Yeah.
All right, well, the last show I want to talk about was Penny Dreadful. This was an interesting episode, and I thought it worth talking about because it started out with a scene with Vanessa talking to our werewolf character, and I thought, okay, I'm getting into the show again. I'm going to start watching. And then it switched to something else entirely. Which I thought was very fascinating. At the whole time I was watching this scene with Vanessa and this witch, who we thought was just a crazy old lady at first. We didn't know what she was, but Vanessa's gone to her because Vanessa's heard that she can answer the questions Vanessa has, and she waits outside for days, looked like 3 days maybe, trying to gain entrance, and finally the woman lets her in, and she goes through this whole elapsed story that takes place in this hour-long episode, but it seems to take place over many weeks, where she's learning who she is, what she is, the fact that she's a natural-born witch, and she's a very powerful one, and she's still a daywalker, as the other one talks to her, which means she's, got good magic, I guess, or light magic. Whereas this old witch, we find out is the sister of the head of the witches who's after Vanessa. And the sister had expelled her from the coven because she didn't want to go dark at first. Or she didn't want to go dark at all with her sister, and her sister branded her in her back and gave her a mark, which is kind of a pentagram or a mark of the devil sort of thing. And she's lived with that, and she's living her life here in this little bit of land that I think Cromwell had given to her, so nobody else can take it from her. And it was given to her in the 1600s, so she's very old. And it goes through this whole story, this elongated story where she eventually the lord who owns the land surrounding her is convinced by his wife, who happens to be her sister, the evil witch, to trump up some charges and get her taken by the townsfolk and burned alive. And sure enough, they take the old witch out as she's dying already. And I don't know about that. I don't know if she's dying of some sort of old age or disease or something, or her spirit is dying because she knows her end is coming, and the end is coming as the burning. But they managed to pour hot oil over her and burn her alive, and all this stuff while Vanessa's forced to watch. And then Vanessa's forced down and branded with a cross, with a Christian cross on her back as well, which is just really powerful stuff. And then we find out at the end that the old lady has altered the deed from Cromwell to give it to her, to Vanessa. So Vanessa owns that little plot of land now that cannot be taken from her. And she heads off. She dresses back up, in her outfit. She heads back off to her world, back to the other characters. And that was the entire episode. And I don't know, I was engrossed by this. I mean, this thing really, I could not stop watching. It was very interesting to watch, and the development. And we learned a lot about Vanessa. We learned a lot about, what she is. We learned a lot about the level, the language of the devil, and all of that stuff, and the sister of the evil witch, and what her backstory was. So, personally, I thought this was a very well done episode. It seems a little out of the ordinary because it's very much a character episode, and it's very much not involving all of the other characters of the world. It was really just a Vanessa episode, but man, I loved it.
And it was interesting talking a little bit, as we did in the regular show, about certain episodes when you have a lot of characters talking, and whether or not you consider those great episodes, or you spend too much time looking at your watch thinking they're taking too long to tell this part of a story. I thought the performances were great. I mean, Eva Green is just, as an actress, totally captivating and mesmerizing. So I'm usually good with seeing a lot of her on an episode. But I must admit, I probably, in my mind, thought this was an interesting backstory and a couple of great performances from the actress certainly playing the older witch, but I was like, this is taking too long to get to that point. So while I did really enjoy it and would give it a good rating, part of me still thought, we probably could have told us in a little less time.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in between the two of you, and I was actually surprised that Brent rated it so high, because usually Brent likes stuff that moves the story forward, versus this was more giving us backstory. It was kind of like the episode in season 1 where we learned about the daughter, Malcolm's daughter, and the connections between Vanessa, Mina, and Malcolm. That episode that ends on the beach. But I really liked that you had it starting with Vanessa telling Ethan this secret that nobody knows, because earlier in the season they said Ethan's going to be her protector, or important as one of her protectors. The bad witch had said that. I liked the Cutwife character a lot. It's one of the things I like about Penny Dreadful is they have these people that you kind of cringe while you're watching them, but you also feel a great deal of empathy for them at the same time. I liked how, so when she has Vanessa outside in the rain and the whatever for days on end, I'm like, this is a horrible person. And then she's in this kind of really nasty little cottage, and she's sort of forcing Vanessa to tap into her senses when she's asking her, tell me who I am, tell me what's on my skin. So it was tough for me to watch in some ways. It was very uncomfortable. You could really see, I could definitely sort of sympathize with the physical strain that this journey had on Vanessa, besides just learning that she's a witch and this whole world that she sort of gets exposed to. So I did like that, but I also was sort of thinking, okay, are we going to get back to her talking to Ethan at the end? So I was sort of expecting there to be one little bit more before it ended. So I was a little surprised when it just ended with her leaving the place. But like I said, the performances were great.
It just dawned on me when you were talking about how tough she was to Vanessa and how she was in this, like dank cottage. The cut wife, is Yoda to Vanessa's Luke. That's what we just saw. That was awesome.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, I hadn't gone there, so now you just made it a lot more interesting. Okay.
And that's it for me.
Alrighty, thank you. I've got a few items to touch on. I'm going to lead our discussion this week for our Continuum rewatch. This is Season 3, Episode number 5, 30 minutes to air. And unlike most weeks where we're crawling over each other to see who gets to talk about the episode first, this week was kind of a short straw one. Not that the episode was bad, but by Continuum standards, by big, cool-looking stuff and great story bits, this one is not quite up to those levels, I think. This is the episode where we're seeing Liberate use their ability to use information to get more valuable information at the and having the rest of everybody else wonder what they're doing, kind of thing, with this whole idea of finding more information about a company that actually owns a TV station. They literally have the go in and take hostages. Dylan's daughter, in the beginning of the episode, we see some folks hanging a banner, in the typical stuff that would be considered pro-Liberate, talking about a corporation that they're not fans of. Turns out it's actually Dylan's daughter who's doing it, so we think, oh God, this is, this guy's now rocking a hard place since he's got to take a tough stance on his daughter. But that wraps eventually into Travis and the gang going in and taking hostages at a TV station where Dylan is there on one of those crossfire type shows and wondering why they're doing it, which is all basically a ruse. I think the company was Firmitas because they wanted to be able to get at some information they had in another location that was very much corporate espionage to, again, see which corporations are doing what and out them so that the general public keeps getting more and more disillusioned with corporations. We did have some good stuff, I thought, dealing with Kellogg and our current Alec. Kellogg still positioning himself to be the big help to him, hoping to have him, hired in and be real close to him. And Alec basically is getting to the point now where he's like, I don't need anyone, and basically offers him just a financial settlement to say, hey, thanks for everything you've done, but he's basically pushing him out. So that's creating a divide there quite a bit. So that was kind of interesting to see. I mean, we did get to see Kira in that whole hostage situation have to, use her suit to go invisible to try to get in, to set it up so that the SWAT folks could get in. So there was some interesting thing there, but most of it was just kind of plodding along, moving some of those things with a little bit of, shall we say, a trick at the end when come to find out that the Dylan daughter thing is actually something they've set up to do, with the idea of eventually getting her a shorter prison sentence and that Liberate will come to her, so maybe planning as a mole. So that's a pretty bold move on his part. But, I think we've got a lot more exciting stuff coming. So this one kind of, once I must admit, when I started watching, I'm like, oh, that's this episode. Okay, so my total notes were a lot less than most Continuum episodes.
So the one part that I did like about this was the opening when you see Travis going to see his daughter and his baby mama on their birthday. And he's talking about how he needs his wife to believe in him and that, he had set them up so that they would be free by denouncing him in some ways. So I like that. I like that part a lot. The other part that I liked was Curtis, in hindsight on the rewatch, every time I see Curtis with Kira, I'm always paying a little more attention to the subtext of what's going on. So it was interesting how he's sort of trying to get an in with her, recognizing that things are not so great with Carlos and Alec right now. And that she also questions whether, is her name Catherine, the one who's running the freelancers, knows that Curtis is coming to see her on the down low. So I thought that stuff was more interesting than in some of the prior episodes. But the other thing was that Kira actually asked about what was locked up in the vault, and I didn't remember that from the first time around, knowing that there's something in that freelancer vault.
Yeah, Kira asking about what was in the vault did come to me as a little bit of a surprise when I saw this. I was like, oh, that's an interesting little Easter egg that I didn't notice before. The whole backstory with Travis, I don't know. I didn't find that very interesting. I'm not too curious about his previous life. I find the character's development and evolution during the series, in the current timeline, if you will, to be interesting. But I didn't really get anything from the past scenes. That didn't work for me. I did find it very interesting how they flipped a couple things on us on this episode when I was rewatching it this time, and realized that first time I was watching it, I was wondering the whole time, why does Liberate need to take this, to capture these people and to take control of the station to get their message broadcast? Because we've seen they have the capability of hacking into transmissions before. They have the web to getting their information out. I don't know why they would need just this one cable network. And take a hold of its satellite. And then, of course, they flipped it at the end because they didn't. That wasn't why they were there. They were there for the code. So that was a nice flip. And then, of course, we've got the flip of the Dylan's daughter thing, because when it started out the first time, we were just like you were saying, Kevin, it was like, oh boy, now Dylan's daughter's involved. How is this going to work? Well, it was a flip because they were, I don't know if the setup was happening before she participated in the placing of the banner, or if it came along afterwards, but she seemed pretty committed to helping him take Liberate down. I like the little joke about, Patty Hearst and who? Oh, I know who she is, Dad. Don't worry, sort of thing. And I had that feeling too, even though I know how it turns out, even at the end of this episode, this rewatch, I was like, ooh, can you trust her? Can you trust her that she's not really going to buy into Liberate? So that was, it was an interesting little twist for those two storylines, but this is very much a setup episode. This is very, very much a setup episode with some flashback on Travis's character to let you know a little bit more about what's going on with him. But otherwise, not a lot of development here.
Well, the other piece that happened was, you have who I always call Other Alec, the one who's running Pyron. He talks about he's creating a 2-stage protocol to make changes, and how he's getting a little bit more paranoid than he had been before. You have this dynamic between him and Kellogg, where Kellogg comes to visit, and he's saying that he'll be his bad guy. He'll be the one who does stuff on his behalf, and he just outright refuses him. And then he's going to try to give him a settlement for SadTech, and Kellogg is sort of like, what? Thrown, but knowing where things are going, this was kind of planting a seed, as you mentioned, about setup.
Yep, at this point, so we've got eight more to finish out season 3 before we get to the premiere of the next and final season. So lots of very interesting stuff still coming.
Yes.
Next time I want to mention, for those of you that are Orphan Black fans, I guest hosted on the Tatiana Is Everyone podcast with Chris. Normally that's hosted by Chris and Stephanie. Stephanie was out of town, and Chris asked me to sit in. This is where we discussed the episode we covered here earlier this week, season 3, episode 5, Scarred by Many Past Frustrations. So if you needed more discussion, want 45 minutes or so and a little more depth, by all means, follow the link in the show notes. But if you are an Orphan Black fan, I do highly recommend Stephanie and Chris do a great job on their podcast.
Oh, cool. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It does. Tatiana is everywhere and everyone.
Including Scorpions.
Scorpions,
yes.
too, yep. And then finally, mention kind of a cool thing I saw in a recent episode of Entertainment Weekly. By the time this podcast's out, it would be last week's print magazine, if you see it on the newsstands. The one with Chris Pratt on the cover. They had an article they have called TV Summer School, where they talk about some shows, 5 shows that they record as under-the-radar gems to view this summer. And it was very cool that 3 of the shows were our genre shows that we've covered: Agent Carter, The 100, and Hindsight. So I thought that was pretty cool to see all those getting a little extra publicity there.
Very psyched that Agent Carter got some props. The 100, I think, is going to get a big bump as people find this thing over the summertime, is my suspicion, because it's gotten so much good word of mouth. But Hindsight, I'm also happy to hear, although I wasn't all that thrilled with how the show sort of ended up, but maybe it'll make a bigger turn next season.
I was very pleased to see Hindsight there. I have enjoyed the show, and it is definitely an under-the-radar sort of show. I mean, I stumbled across it watching a preview for it and told Kevin and Wendy about it. It is not something that had crossed our radar before. I just stumbled across it on VH1 or some other channel. But I am actually kind of surprised to see Agent Carter in the 100 here is considered to be under the radar, because I thought Agent Carter had a lot of buzz being Marvel MCU, and I'm surprised that people consider it under the radar, and the 100 seems to be a very popular CW show getting good ratings, so I was surprised to see those 2 on the list, actually.
Yeah, I guess that's, again, we're so tuned in with all the genre stuff. That's why it's interesting with a big, general publication like this, what they call under the radar. Yeah, you could kind of wonder on. I do know that the 100 is pretty ratings challenged, which is why it's not actually coming back till 2016. Great that CW renewed it. And I do think with this much extra time and how solid certainly that second season was, it will certainly help it. But it's definitely ratings challenged. So maybe that'll come into play. I was mentioning to Brent, I'm not sure if Wendy noticed, but those of you who might be joining us at DragonCon, that they announced this week that the actors who play the leads, Clark and Bellamy, are going to be guests. So that's something to look forward to as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Agent Carter was ratings challenged also to some degree. I don't know if part of it was the timing of when it came out, that folks were like, oh, I missed the start of the train, so they just missed it, which I don't think really needed to be true for Agent Carter. I think you could have jumped in the middle and enjoyed it. But a lot of people weren't aware of Agent Carter that I would talk to, so I'm glad it's going to get some more notice.
And I think that'll wrap us up for this week's last call. Folks, we appreciate you tuning in. Great talking to Brent and Wendy. A lot of good stuff. And looking forward to getting into our summer mode with lots of good shows coming this summer and some other shows we'll be rewatching. We hope you're along with us. So we hope you all have a great week.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Catch you next time.
We love to get your feedback. Call us at 206-202-4182 or leave us a Skype voicemail to our Tuning Into SciFi TV name. We have many ways to keep the discussion going on our blog. Drop by tuningintoscifitv.com and leave a comment. On the blog, you'll also find links to the forum discussions and other links to follow our Twitter and RSS feeds and find our Facebook account.
Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV was hosted by Kevin Batchelder, Wendy Hembrock, and Brent Barrett. The theme music for Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV is by Beatnik Turtle. Used with permission. Listen to Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV on Stitcher Radio on Demand. Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. You've been listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call for episode 338, recorded May 23, 2015.